I wanted to practice painting outside more, so I started this painting at Beck Ranch in Osteen, Florida. Drawing is my least favorite part about painting, and it takes me so long. I decided to skip it for this one and just see what happens. The painting I did outside was very light, and I needed to go back and darken everything up. For the sky color, I used ultramarine blue with just a smidge of phthalo green. The greens are mixed with ultramarine blue and transparent yellow. My goal for this painting was to recreate the feeling of the bright, breezy day with the Spanish moss swaying. I'm using a stiff brush to pick up some Spanish moss in the distance. The grays are a mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. The lighter spring greens were mixed with phthalo green and transparent yellow. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and raw sienna were applied to the trunk, wet into wet. Once dry, color was dry brushed on, holding the brush at more of a parallel angle to the paper, creating a bark texture. In order to recreate the feeling of a bright sunny day, I needed to increase the cast shadows and the form shadows so that the light areas read as sunshine. Resurrection fern was growing on the limbs and trunks of the oak trees. This fern looks dead without water, and then when it rains, they come back to life, thus the name resurrection fern. I continued to add layers to the back trees and shrubs to increase the depth and complexity. Additional layers are also added to the trunks of the trees. I am dropping in different colors and letting them mingle on the paper instead of on the palette, as that is what watercolor does best. Some of the blue and aquas will read as reflected light coming from the surrounding areas. Spanish moss was painted in several ways. The closest moss was dried brush on with dark paint. A fine liner was used some of the small mossy details and used to dry brush on others. My cast shadows needed to be darker, and as a rule, they are generally darker than the form shadows. I continued to work my way through the painting, keeping in mind where the lights and shadows are. I've always wanted to be able to paint Florida landscapes. I usually have a plan and I'm optimistic about the outcome to start with, and it's great fun in the beginning. Somewhere in the middle, it's beginning to look hopeless until I don't really care how it turns out anymore, and then I'm brave enough to just go ahead and add lots more paint, and that usually helps the situation. Dappled shadows are added to indicate the sun shining through the leaves. I needed some darker greens behind the middle tree so that the light side of the tree stood out better. I'm using the side of the brush to add more texture to the background leaves. My favorite part of this painting was starting it outside. Painting without a drawing encouraged me to be looser and focus on the feeling that I wanted to achieve instead of the actual duplication of the scene. And more shadows. It will eventually get there. Now we're finally getting some darks in there. In this painting, I was trying to lead the viewer's eyes around the painting and not out of the picture with the tree limbs. I think that was accomplished with the tree limbs being lighter at the edges and with the dark shadows and moss leading your eyes in a circular motion around the scene. I also want my landscapes to be harmonious and peaceful, and I tried to accomplish this by using a limited palette and repeating the colors throughout the landscape. I'm just adding in some of the final darks and shadows. I think it has finally accomplished the purpose of giving the feeling of the bright light. I am painting on a 300-pound arch or arches block. Blocks are really nice for plein air painting. And here is the finished painting, Dancing Oaks.